Winterfell was quiet in a way Ned Stark had never trusted. The snow lay heavy on the stones, and the wind moved through the yard like it carried old whispers. He stood alone for a long time before the heart tree, staring at the red leaves and the face carved deep into the white bark. He had come here to think, but thinking had only made his chest feel heavier. Robert was coming north. That alone was trouble enough, but it was the letter from the capital that had cracked something open inside him. Jon Arryn was dead, and everyone pretended it was sickness. Ned knew better. He had known Jon Arryn all his life. Strong men like that did not simply wither away. Catelyn wanted answers. His children were watching him more closely than they ever had. And Jon Snow, Jon's face had been in his thoughts more than usual. The boy was almost a man now, and the lie Ned had carried for nearly 2 decades felt heavier with every passing year. He had promised Lyanna. The memory came back as it always did. Blood on the sheets, the smell of roses, her hand gripping his with a strength that surprised him. "Promise me, Ned," she had whispered. He had promised, and that promise had shaped his whole life. It had cost him honor in the eyes of others, trust in his marriage, and peace in his own heart. That morning, Ned Stark made a choice. When Robert arrived, Winterfell filled with noise and laughter, but Ned felt none of it. The king hugged him, called him brother, drank too much, and spoke too loudly. The court followed like shadows, each with their own hunger and secrets. Ned watched them all, knowing that lies live easily in the South. That night, after the feast, Ned asked Robert to walk with him, just the two of them. No guards, no wine. They stopped in the Godswood, where Robert shifted uncomfortably under the watching face of the heart tree. "7 hells, Ned," he muttered. "You always bring me to creepy places when you want to say something serious." "I have lived a lie," Ned said. Robert laughed at first, then stopped when he saw Ned's face. "What kind of lie?" Ned took a breath that felt like it might tear him in half. "Jon Snow is not my son." The words hung in the cold air. Robert stared at him. "That's it? You dragged me out here for that? I always knew you weren't the type to." "He is Lyanna's son." The world seemed to stop. Robert's face changed slowly, like stone cracking. "Don't joke about her," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I never would," Ned replied. "She bore a son in Dorne. His father was Rhaegar Targaryen." Silence pressed down on them. Robert's hands curled into fists. His breathing grew rough. "I should kill you," Robert said. "I should kill the boy." "You won't," Ned said, steady but pale. "Because Lyanna begged me to protect him, because he is innocent, and because you loved her." Robert turned away, his shoulders shaking. "Rhaegar raped her," he said, like it was a truth carved into his bones. "No," Ned said softly. "He loved her, and she loved him." The words hurt them both. When Robert finally spoke again, his voice was tired, old. "If anyone else hears this, the boy dies. You know that." "I know," Ned said. "That is why I am telling you now, before the South swallows us all." Robert looked at Ned for a long time. "You should have told me years ago." "Yes," Ned said. "I should have." Nothing was the same after that night. Catelyn noticed first. The distance in Ned's eyes shifted, like a weight had been moved, but not lifted. When he told her the truth, she cried, not from anger, but from relief. The ghost she had lived beside finally had a name. Jon Snow did not know yet. Ned could not bring himself to do that. Not while the world was still so dangerous. But secrets have a way of escaping, especially when truth finally cracks the walls, holding it back. In King's Landing, shadows were already moving, and far away, across the narrow sea, the last dragon's blood was stirring. Ned Stark had chosen honesty. Now the realm would pay the price. The ride south felt longer than it ever had before. Ned Stark sat his horse like a man walking toward judgment, every mile pressing the truth deeper into the world. Robert rode ahead most days, loud and laughing as always, but the space between them had changed. The old ease was gone. They spoke little when they were alone. Catelyn stayed behind at Winterfell, and that troubled Ned more than he expected. For the first time, she knew everything, and now he was riding into danger without her steady presence. Jon watched them leave from the battlements, his face carefully blank, but Ned felt that look like a knife between his shoulders. King's Landing greeted them with heat, noise, and rot hidden beneath perfume. The city always felt wrong to Ned, like a place built on too many bones. As Hand of the King, his days filled quickly with small lies, large dangers, and men who smiled too easily. The truth did not stay buried for long. It started with a look. Varys watched Ned more closely than before, his soft eyes sharp with curiosity. Littlefinger joked as usual, but his jokes circled closer to Jon Snow than they should have, and the Queen Cersei looked at Ned Stark with a cold interest that felt newly focused. One evening, after a council meeting thick with arguments and half-spoken threats, Cersei stopped him in a corridor. "You look tired, Lord Stark," she said. "Truth does that to a man." Ned stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." She smiled. "Of course you do." That night, Ned finally told Jon the truth. He sent for him quietly, without guards or witnesses. Jon stood before him, tall now, his face a mix of stark honor and something older, something fierce. "You have the right to know who you are," Ned said. Jon listened without interrupting. When Ned finished, the room felt hollow, like all the air had been taken away. "So I'm not your shame," Jon said slowly. "I'm your promise." Ned nodded, his eyes wet. "You are my blood. You are my family." Jon's hands shook. "If anyone knows, they won't," Ned said, though he was no longer certain. "But you must leave. The wall is no longer safe enough as a hiding place, yet it is the only one that still offers distance." Jon left before dawn, carrying more than a sword and cloak. He carried a name that could burn kingdoms. Too late, Varys spoke to Robert 2 days later. Carefully, softly, he framed it as concern, as whispers he could no longer ignore. Robert summoned Ned that same night. "You swore no one else knew," Robert said, pacing like a caged animal. "I swore I would protect him," Ned replied. "Not that the world would stay silent." Robert drank until his hands shook. "The Lannisters know," he said. "The Queen knows." Ned closed his eyes. "Then Jon is already marked." Robert laughed bitterly. "The gods have a cruel sense of humor. I spent my life killing Targaryens, and now one wears a wolf's face." "He is more Stark than dragon," Ned said. "Because I raised him." Robert stopped pacing. "If Tywin hears, he will," Ned said. And he did. The city shifted overnight. Gold cloaks doubled. Ravens flew. The small council became a battlefield of words. Cersei pressed for Jon Snow's death with thinly veiled smiles. Renly spoke of alliances. Stannis sent letters no one wanted to read. Then Robert fell ill. Some said it was wine. Some said it was fate. Ned knew better. The king lay sweating and weak, his strength draining away as quickly as the truth had spread. Before Robert died, he made one last decree. "The boy lives," he rasped, gripping Ned's arm. "I won't be remembered as a butcher of children." When Robert Baratheon died, the realm did not mourn. It fractured. The queen moved fast. Guards loyal to gold and lions flooded the Red Keep. Ned was seized before dawn, his honor no shield against fear. But this time, the lie that killed him in another life did not exist. When they dragged him before the court, Ned Stark did not confess to treason. He spoke the truth. Jon Snow was the rightful heir. The throne shook beneath those words. And somewhere on the road north, a young man with a direwolf sigil felt the world turning toward him like a storm. The throne room had never felt so small. Ned Stark stood in chains, his back straight, his face pale but calm. The crowd murmured like a restless sea. Lords, guards, courtiers, they all leaned forward when he spoke Jon's name again, when he said the word heir without hesitation. Truth had weight, and it crushed the air from the room. Cersei rose slowly from the Iron Throne. She did not shout. She did not rage. That frightened Ned more than anger ever could. "You expect us to believe this?" she asked softly. "That a bastard race in the north is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen?" "I expect you to fear it," Ned said, Because you know it's true. Joffrey laughed, sharp and cruel. Kill him, the boy king said, and hunt down the bastard too. But the court was no longer united. The words had spread too far, too fast. Stannis Baratheon's letters had reached half the realm, each sealed with cold certainty. Some lords had already begun to count bloodlines instead of gold. Ned was not executed that day. He was thrown into a black cell, deeper than before, while the realm decided what to do with the truth. North of the city, Jon Snow rode hard. He had felt it before the raven reached him. The world had shifted under his feet, like ice cracking beneath a careless step. When the message finally came, sealed with Stark wax and written in a hurried hand, Jon read it 3 times before the words settled. His father. No, his uncle had spoken. The secret was out. Every mile north, men looked at Jon differently. Some with curiosity, some with fear, some with sudden respect that made his skin crawl. He had wanted the wall to disappear into duty and silence. Instead, destiny followed him like a shadow. At Winterfell, Catelyn Stark gathered the banners, not for rebellion, for protection. The boy is hunted, she told the lords. Whether you believe the story or not does not matter. He has Stark blood, and that is enough. The North agreed. In King's Landing, fear rotted loyalty. Gold cloaks changed sides overnight. Littlefinger vanished. Varys whispered in 100 ears, but trusted none. And Cersei, for all her pride, began to understand something too late. Truth was more dangerous than lies. When the crowd outside the Sept of Baelor began shouting Jon Snow's name instead of Joffrey's, the Queen ordered Ned Stark brought before her privately. "You destroyed everything," she said, pacing before his cell. "One honest man, and the world burns." "The world was already burning," Ned replied. "You were just warm enough to ignore the smoke." She stopped in front of him. "If I let you live, will you call him king?" "I will call him what he is," Ned said, "whether I live or die." Cersei smiled then, but there was no joy in it. "Then you will die, but not today." She needed time. She needed allies. And most of all, she needed Jon Snow dead. That night, assassins rode north. They never reached him. The Stark banners found them first, their bodies left frozen along the road like warnings carved in blood and snow. When Jon Snow arrived at Winterfell, the gates opened to him not as a bastard, but as a son returned. The weight of it nearly crushed him. He stood in the great hall where he had grown up feeling smaller than ever. "I don't want a crown," he said to his mother's kin, his voice rough. "I never did." Catelyn looked at him with tired eyes and said, "The world does not care what we want." Ravens flew again, from the wall, from Dragonstone, from the Reach. The realm was choosing sides, and Ned Stark, alone in a dark cell, finally understood the cost of truth. It did not save lives. It demanded them. Winter came early, the year the truth broke the realm. Snow fell thick across the north, covering roads, burying bodies, and silencing doubts. Jon Snow stood on the battlements of Winterfell, watching men drill in the yard below. They wore different sigils now: wolves, bears, even a few banners he did not recognize, but they all followed one command: protect the dragon wolf. Jon hated that name, but he understood why it existed. Men needed symbols more than they needed truth. Every day brought new letters. Some called him Your Grace. Others promised swords. A few promised death. Jon read them all and slept little. He dreamed of fire-melting snow, of a throne made not of blades, but bones. In King's Landing, Cersei lost control one small piece at a time. The city no longer loved Joffrey. Bread ran short. Gold cloaks whispered. When news came that the North and the Riverlands had declared Jon Snow the true king, the Red Keep felt suddenly very fragile. Cersei ordered Ned Stark executed at dawn. She thought killing the man who spoke the truth would bury it. They dragged him to the steps of the Great Sept under a gray sky. The crowd was thinner than she expected. Some faces looked away. Others stared with something close to respect. Ned Stark did not beg. I loved my sister, he said when they asked for his last words, and I loved my children. I told the truth because lies built this kingdom, and lies will destroy it. The sword fell. The north felt it like a wound. When the raven reached Winterfell, Jon did not speak for a long time. He sat in the godswood, staring at the heart tree, the same way Ned had once done. The promise had cost his uncle his life. I won't waste it, Jon whispered. That night, Jon accepted the crown, not of iron, of responsibility. The war that followed was not quick or glorious. It was cold, slow, and cruel. Brothers fought brothers. Old oaths cracked. New ones were written in blood. Jon led when he had to, listened when he could, and learned that mercy was sometimes harder than killing. Dragons did not come to him. Yet, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen felt something stir when the stories reached her. A nephew raised by wolves. A man who did not want power, but carried it anyway. She laughed at first, then stopped. Blood calls to blood, she said softly. In the south, Cersei burned bridges faster than she could build them. The Reach turned away. Dorne went silent, then hostile. Even the Lannisters began to question a queen who ruled only through fear. When Jon's forces reached the Trident, the realm already felt tired of war. Lords bent the knee not because of fire or fear, but because Jon Snow did not lie to them. That scared them more than any dragon. On the eve of the final march toward King's Landing, Jon dreamed of Ned Stark. Not in chains, not bleeding, just standing quietly, watching. You did the right thing, Jon said. Ned smiled, tired but proud. The right thing isn't the same as the easy thing. When Jon woke, the snow had stopped. The gates of King's Landing would open soon, one way or another, and the truth that began in a godswood was about to claim its throne. The bells of King's Landing rang before the first sword was drawn. Jon Snow stood at the front of the host, his cloak heavy with frost and travel, his sword still in its sheath. He had expected fire, screams, defiance. Instead, the city answered him with sound meant for surrender. The gates opened slowly. People filled the streets, thin and tired, holding scraps of cloth instead of weapons. Some knelt, some only stared. A few cried his name, unsure if it was hope or habit. Jon felt sick. This was not how it was supposed to feel. Victories in songs were loud and proud. This one felt like walking into a room where grief had already settled. The Red Keep loomed ahead, red stone darkened by years of blood and sun. Cersei waited inside, of that Jon had no doubt. She had not fled. Pride would not allow it. She met him in the throne room. No court. No music. No child king beside her. Just Cersei Lannister standing before the Iron Throne, dressed in black and gold, her eyes sharp and empty. So, she said, Ned Stark's truth finally arrives. Jon bowed his head slightly, not to her, to the dead behind him. This doesn't have to end in fire, Jon said. Yield, and you live. Cersei laughed. It was a brittle sound. You sound like him, always so certain honesty was a shield. She stepped closer. Tell me, boy, does knowing who your father was make the years of lies easier to bear? Jon met her gaze. It made me understand why he died. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. Then it was gone. I burned letters, she said. Killed men. Lied to my own children. And still the truth walked through my gates like it owned the place. She turned, one hand brushing the twisted blades of the throne. If you sit there, it won't forgive you. Thrones never do. I'm not here to be forgiven, Jon said. I'm here to end this. Cersei smiled sadly. Then do it. She reached for a cup on the step beside the throne and drank before anyone could stop her. The goblet shattered on the floor. She fell without another word. Silence followed. Jon did not move. He did not cheer. He only closed his eyes. The crown came to him quietly. There was no great ceremony, no roaring crowd. The realm was too tired for that. Lords bent the knee one by one. some with respect, some with relief, some with resentment that would take years to fade. Jon Snow became king not because he conquered, but because there was no one left who could deny him. Weeks later, when the city began to heal, Jon walked alone through the Red Keep until he found a small, quiet room that faced the Godswood below, a place Ned Stark might have liked. He ordered the Iron Throne melted. Too many lies were told from it, he said simply. When Daenerys Targaryen finally arrived, dragons casting long shadows over the city, she expected challenge. Instead, Jon welcomed her as family. They spoke for hours, of blood, of loss, of what power cost. When she offered to rule beside him, Jon agreed, not out of desire, but understanding. Some stories ended in fire. This one ended in truth. And far to the north, beneath a heart tree dusted with snow, the wind moved through red leaves like a quiet, lasting promise. Years later, people would argue about when the realm truly changed. Some said it was the day the Iron Throne melted into slag. Others said it was when dragons flew over King's Landing without burning it. But the older men, the ones who remembered Robert and the wars before him, said it began much earlier with one honest sentence, spoken by a northern lord who knew it would kill him. Jon ruled from a chair of carved wood, plain and unadorned. He kept it that way on purpose. Every lord who entered the hall noticed it. Every lord understood the message. Power was no longer meant to impress. Daenerys ruled beside him, but not above him. They argued often. She believed in breaking the world to make it better. Jon believed the world broke easily enough on its own. Between them, the realm found balance uneasy, fragile, but real. Not everyone was happy. There were rebellions, small ones at first. Lords who missed the old games, who missed the comfort of lies wrapped in tradition. Jon answered them with justice when he could, and steel when he had no other choice. Each decision weighed on him, each death another ghost added to his nights. He visited the Godswood whenever the burden became too heavy. In those quiet moments, he spoke to Ned Stark like he was still alive, about laws passed, about mercy given, about mistakes made. "I still don't know if I'm doing this right," Jon would say. The wind never answered, but somehow that was enough. Daenerys eventually returned east, not in anger, but in acceptance. Her fire was needed elsewhere. They parted as family, not rivals, bound by blood and a shared understanding that love did not always mean staying. When she left, Jon felt the weight double. Peace is harder than war. Children grew up knowing the truth of the realm's history, not the pretty version sung by bards. Schools taught names that had once been erased. Schools taught names that had once been erased. Bastards were no longer born into silence. Oaths meant something again because they were no longer built on lies everyone pretended not to see. And slowly, almost without noticing, the fear began to fade. On the anniversary of Ned Stark's death, Jon rode north alone. No guards, no banners, just a man returning to where it all began. He knelt beneath the heart tree and placed his hand against the bark. "I didn't save you," Jon said quietly, "but I didn't let it be for nothing." For the first time in years, the weight lifted just a little. The truth had not made the world kinder. It had not erased pain or ended loss, but it had given people something rarer than peace. It gave them a choice, and that was what Ned Stark had died for. The last years of Jon's reign were quiet enough that singers struggled to make songs from them. There were no great battles, no cities burning, no heroes carved larger than life, just seasons passing the way they were supposed to. Crops grew. Roads were repaired. Children born during the war grew up without knowing the sound of siege horns in their sleep. That, Jon decided, was the greatest victory. He grew older in small ways that surprised him, gray at his temples, a stiffness in his sword arm on cold mornings. He laughed more easily than he once had, though sadness never fully left his eyes. Some wounds heal into scars. Some simply become part of you. When he finally took a wife, it was not for alliance or pressure. It was for understanding. She knew who he was, where he came from, and what the crown cost him every day. They had children who carried both wolf and dragon in their blood, but were raised to believe neither made them better than anyone else. Blood explains where you start, Jon told them, not where you end. On his last ride north, years later, Jon knew it would be the final one. His body felt it. The North greeted him with snow and silence, the kind that felt honest. Winterfell stood strong, worn but unbroken, like the family that had shaped him. He asked to be left alone in the godswood. The heart tree was older than memory. Its red leaves fell around him as he sat beneath it, the same place where a man named Ned Stark once chose truth over safety. "I understand now," Jon said aloud, his voice thin but steady. "You didn't believe truth would save you. You believed it was worth dying for." The wind moved through the branches, soft and slow. When Jon Snow died, there was no panic, no struggle for power. The laws he had built held. The people he trusted stepped forward. The realm did not tear itself apart trying to replace him. That was how everyone knew the truth had finally won. Years later, children would ask, who changed the world? Jon Snow, the king who refused a throne of blades, or Ned Stark, the man who spoke one honest sentence and paid for it with his life? The answer was always the same. It wasn't the king. It wasn't the warrior. It wasn't the dragon. It was the choice. And once made, the world could never go back.